Good evening, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Just two quick announcements. October 26th, it was supposed to be our Pastor Appreciation Day. We're canceling that for now, and right after service, we're going to have a quick meeting just for members only right after the service. And then I know this sounds like it should be far away, but it's not. November 23rd, Friends and Family Day. We're going to have Jonathan White here. So make sure you're marking your calendars and you're inviting friends and family to come and fellowship with us on that day. And that's all I have.
No, I don't know what to do with it. Maybe this time I'll turn on my mic since I have the extra time. Well, recently we talked about the principle of forgiveness, and tonight we're going to talk about the parable of forgiveness. And most of you are familiar with the parables in the Scripture, and we'll give you the Scripture for that in just a little bit. But I thought before we started off today, most of us are aware that sin is sin, right? And do we classify sin? The we is what I'm talking about here. Do we decide which sin is really, really bad and which sin may not be as bad? And we even have maybe some of the stuff in our vocabulary, like for instance, as most people know, a little white lie is not really bad. It's not like the black lie. The white lie is kind of, it's just, well, we all know what that is. That's when your wife said, "Do I look fat in this dress?" And you, yeah, and the white lie is, "No, darling, you do not." That's a white lie. Life lie? I want to live lie. Okay. That is the I want to live lie. And you never say to her, no matter what, "Do I look fat in this dress?" And you just say, "No." Beep, beep, beep. No, you don't want to do that. So you just let it slide, right? And but we do classify what we accept as, we know that somebody who does a really bad thing is a worse sinner than a person who only did a partially bad thing. Now, when we try to bring that into Scripture, it doesn't gel well, does it? Because why? But why? An offense against God. An offense against God, and what's the big deal about that? Let's put it to you another way. Can God look at sin? I guess if he could, then there would have been no reason for him to turn around and turn his face away from the Savior when the Savior was dying on the cross, because Jesus was taking all the sin of the world. But God turned away from that, right? Huh? It'll be hard to get you all to talk tonight. So here's the thing. When we look at sin, we say, oh, yes, we do classify sin. And certainly, we also classify sin based upon its distance. A sin in Ashtabula is not as bad as a sin on your front porch. Could be the same one. But when it comes home, well, then that sin is not something that you discuss in a Bible study. Now, that sin is at your front door, and you have to discuss it openly. So when we start thinking about forgiveness, I think that we look at forgiveness also based upon what our experiences are and what we will tolerate and what we won't tolerate. And sometimes we don't like the idea. And I got to tell you, I don't want to get too far from the lesson today, but I was talking to somebody earlier today about the fact that it seems like that I'm going to bring this up because I'm tired of not just telling you all the truth all the time. I mean, sometimes I try to tell you the truth, but I put a little bow on it so it's not as, or maybe put a little sugar on it so it's a little bit more palatable. But I was talking to somebody today, and they were talking to me about dress codes. It don't matter in the church. And I said, yeah, I think it does. And I said, no, it don't. No, it don't. Because the world doesn't want to be, ostracized because of the fact, because most of you know I wear a suit on Sunday morning. I wear a suit every Sunday morning. I do not wear shorts to preach in with running shoes. I don't. But there are churches where the pastor does exactly that. He comes to the pulpit in shorts and T-shirts. And, they're not called T-shirts anymore, are they? They're called, what are they called? Shirts. They're, what? Tees? They don't even get a T-shirt anymore. It's just tees. So they wear this, and they say, but that's because of the fact that God doesn't look on the outward man. He only looks on the inward man, right? We all with that, yeah? And so it doesn't matter what you wear. If you see a minister out in the public and he's got a collar on him, what do you think about? And you got to remember that you cannot judge an entire denomination based upon the shenanigans of a few. But what does the collar represent? Holy. When you see a man out and about and he's got a collar on, you say that's a churchman. That's a churchman. Okay? And of course, if he's behaving like the world when he's got his collar on, is your opinion of him going to be harsher than against somebody else? Of course it will. Of course it will, because this person represents the church. Of course, all of you represent the church. But people say, I don't think that God looks at the outward man and all this other stuff, and yeah, you go into that. I think it's more than that. I think sometimes we don't want to be separated from the world. We want to look like the world. We don't want the world to judge us as thinking that we're holier than they are. Although most of the time, because we go to church and love the Lord, we are. But we don't like to talk about that because we'd be boasting about our own holiness, and you can't do that. But that's what the world does. They judge us by the way we look. If you see the collar, that's a man of the church. And the expectation of the man of the church is higher than anybody else's, whatever it is. But sometimes when we come to church, like here in this church, not only me, but the deacons wear ties. And they have a little badge that says deacon right on it. And he said, but you don't need all that stuff. It's because of the fact the Bible said, come ye out from the world and be ye separate. But we rebel against those kind of things, and we classify everything. We not only classify sin to the ones that we'll accept or not accept, but we also classify behavior and all of these things. And so here we are as humans, and around us is surrounded this cloud of judgment that we're involved in, and we have to be exceedingly careful about that kind of thing, because Jesus reminds us the practice of forgiveness in two parables. Jesus points out to forgive like God and not like man. Oh, come on. That's a little harsh, don't you think? To forgive like God. Are you capable of that? Those of you that have judged sin, are you capable of forgiving like God? I'm just asking. I think we try. I do think we try. I think we try. But somebody said one time in a quote, it said, we are never more like God than when we forgive others. That's when we're closer to being like God, when we forgive others. Now, the first parable we're talking about tonight is forgiving like God. Forgiving like God. And most of us, I think, have at one time or another read the story of the prodigal son that's mentioned in the book of Luke, in chapter 15. I want to read a couple of verses. I will arise and go to my father and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. Now, Jesus is showing us the heart of the one who is willing to forgive. And what did we see about this person? First of all, he's eager to forgive. That's very difficult for us right there, isn't it? To be eager to forgive? Because how many of you have kept a grudge for more than a half an hour? How many of you have found yourself reluctant to forgive in the first day or so? As time goes by, you seem to be a little bit better, right? A little bit better. But some stuff stays with us because we've classified the sin. If it's a sin against Pam, it's not as bad as if it was a sin against me. You know, it makes good sense there, right? Because really, we don't have to defend Pam. We have to defend us. So we look at it and we say, well, you know. But now here's the thing. Eagerly. The Bible said that his father walked very slowly towards him because he was so reluctant. Or he said, his father ran to him, and that means that he was eager to forgive his son. He wasn't being tolerant. Have you ever noticed that sometimes when we forgive a person, we forgive them enough to tolerate their presence, but we really don't want to be around them? I mean, no, you probably never had that, right? Some less than righteous people have had that problem. You know, so, okay, yeah, you know what? And I was talking to somebody about this very thing, that God gave us the ability, I think, to forgive when he saved us. But he should have added one more thing, don't you think? And the thing that he should have added was divine ketosis, where he could empty himself of all. See, because God can not only forgive, but he can forget. God didn't give you that gift. You don't forget. And sometimes we beat ourselves up because we have this, I cannot forget. You know, I should be able to forgive and forget. But here's the thing. I don't think that God wanted to take that away from us. I think he wanted us to remember things. Unless you have a bad memory. If you've got a bad memory, then you are golden, no problems. Okay? Matters of fact, if you can not only forgive and forget, often they look at you and say you have Alzheimer's. So, you know, that kind of goes with the territory here, but to forgive and forget. But God maybe wanted you to remember some things. Like he wanted you to remember how far he brought you from. He don't want you to forget that you were a sinner. And he doesn't want you to forget that you were saved by grace. He doesn't want you to forget the blessings that he has multiplied to you and given you. He don't want you to forget how far he came to rescue you. He doesn't want you to forget those things, so he didn't take away your ability to retain information, but he tempered it with our ability to forgive. Now, that doesn't mean that we forget, right? We kind of remember things that happened to us. I got to tell you, I still remember a fellow that I thought, well, I'm not going to go too long in my stories because I don't care for him as much, because they remind me of who I am. But I think it's important for us to understand something, that God is not reluctant to forgive us. He's eager to forgive us. Because he doesn't even wait for the sinner to get home. Do you know that the day that you got saved, even before you went to the altar, God was already eager for you to come, even before you got there? Even before you gave your heart to the Lord, he was already eager for you to arrive. Doesn't that kind of bless you? Before you ever got up here and started your prayer, God forgive me because how many of you, when you got to the altar, had a list of sins that you wanted him to know about? Yeah, you remember that, did you? I got to tell you, I did not. When I went to the altar, I said, Lord, I'm sorry, I'm a sinner. I'm just a sinner. I didn't go over the list of things because, first of all, well, yeah. And then I'd have to sin. And Lord, as you know, this morning, and then I know, and right after that, while I was still having my coffee, I had this errant. No, I don't want to do that. So what I want to say is, God, I'm glad you forgave me, and I'm glad you're walking with me, and I'm glad that you're staying with me and correcting me every day. As each day goes by in you, I'm getting a little better. The Apostle Paul didn't have a problem. He said, listen, I have not yet apprehended, but I stretch. Laid himself out. I'm stretching towards the high calling. He said, I haven't apprehended it yet, but I stretch. And Paul was a pretty good man, wouldn't you say? So some of us will beat ourselves up time infinitum, even when God forgives us and we forget all the fact that God has. Now, that doesn't give us a license to sin, by the way. That doesn't say, well, God's so understanding, he's probably going to check this next one off as soon as I do it. No, don't be stupid. Because if we sin willfully after we've come to the knowledge of the truth, there is no sacrifice for that sin. So that may not be something you want to get involved in, yes? Don't tempt the Lord God. Understand that if we sin, we have an advocate with the Father, but it does not say, whenever you get a chance, go out and sin, you have an advocate with your Father. It says, if you sin, something that you're not planning, but if you plan a sin, that's deliberate. You have to be careful about it. Yeah? Next slide. Jesus shows us the heart of the Father who forgives. Eagerly, totally forgive, not just tolerant, and forgive lavishly. How many of you, when you look back at your life and the fact that you now are in the church, realize that was a lavish forgiveness that he gave you? Wasn't it? Well, maybe some of you were not like me. I was in school, and I thought that I had arrived, that I was very, very smart. And I was learning things that were above the norm, so to speak. I'm learning anatomy, physiology, microbiology, animal psychology. I'm learning because I'm going to be the man. And I was so smart that I had already divested myself of my heritage. My heritage was one that said, you need to be saved. My dad and my mom taught me that, but now I'm above that kind of thing. I don't need that anymore. I'm in college. I'm learning great things, and I'm so smart, and I'm smarter than them poor people that have to have the pablum of religion. That was me. It got even to the point where I was out drinking with a few of my friends, and I invited them over to my house, and I spoke to them on why I thought that the idea of God was just for infantile people that really don't see the reality of the world. Why God did not kill me at that moment of time shows again the lavish love that he has to forgive. Because here I am in my stupidity saying things against a God who stood on the back porch of nowhere and formed a universe. And who are you? No wonder he said to Job, Job, where were you? You're complaining, but where were you, Job? Where were you when the lambs were being born on the mountaintop? Where were you at? Where were you when I hang Pleiades and Orion in the sky? Where were you at? You complaining about things you don't have any idea what it was. We don't really understand the mind and the love of God because it is so grand. And I tell you, it is time for the church to get back to the realization that we worship a holy and righteous God who is worthy of our adoration. And if he says to you, don't be like the world, we should not rebel against it. We ought to say, okay, God, because you forgave me, I'm ready to follow you in obedience. And obedience is better than what? Huh? Better than sacrifice. Next slide. Jesus is telling us in Matthew, he had a second parable about the unforgiving man, the unforgiving servant. The servant therefore fell down and worshipped him, saying, Lord, this is in Matthew chapter 18, verses 26 through 30. The servant therefore fell down and worshipped him, saying, Lord, have patience with me, and I will pay thee all. And then the Lord of that servant was moved with compassion and loosed him and forgave him the debt. But the same servant went out and found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 pence, and he laid hands on him and took him by the throat, saying, pay me what you owe. And his fellow servant fell down at his feet and besought him, saying, have patience with me, and I will pay thee all. And he would not, but went and cast him into prison till he should pay the debt. Now remember, he was just forgiven, but yet he couldn't forgive somebody else. Same crime, same idea behind it. But sometimes, we're not as eager to forgive as we should be, yeah? I mean, you would think, and the Bible kind of tells you in this parable, he says, I just forgave him, and immediately, right after the forgiveness, immediately he was eager to get his money back. So he went to the person that owed him money and took him by the throat. Next slide. I think that man nurses a grudge. God eagerly forgives and restores, but man keeps a score. You remember I told you that 70 times 7? 490 times? We keep a score. We're to the point right now where when it gets to be 491, we know the number. You have done this to me so many times I can't even count them anymore, but I know it's 491. So I'm going to let you know, I'm going to let you have it. We keep a score. God totally and lavishly gives and forgets our problem with him because that's love. Are some of you following this so far? Amen. Wouldn't you rather I was teaching something else tonight? No. This business of forgiveness is hard, I think. And the idea that I might hold a grudge, that bothers me. Have any of you ever had a grudge against somebody? Yeah. It's hard to get rid of that, isn't it? Can you imagine having a grudge because somebody didn't honor your pig? You wouldn't want to go to war over something that silly, would you? No. Somebody should have told that to the Hatfields and McCords, though. How many people got killed over that? And over a pig. Maybe that's where a pig and a poke comes from. I don't know. What is that anyway? Does anybody ever know? Any of you people from the South ever hear that's like a pig and a poke? How? What does it mean? This is not on our lesson. This is not on your lesson plan. I'm just trying to figure out what pig and a poke means. Anybody know? Can you imagine? Said, I got this pig and I'm going to put it in a sack. How many of you tried to catch a pig? Let alone put it in a sack. It's just not, it's not as easy as you might think. But man nurses a grudge, and even when it's hard on us, we continue to try our very best to keep that going. So man really keeps a score, and God is not in that. Next slide. I need to hurry along because I know I'm already behind. You can go to the next one. And so it reminds us, which parable, by the way, reminds us of ourselves? The first one or the second one? The prodigal son is kind of like all of us, right? We've all come to him, but that's probably not where we stay to identify. That was lavish love, lavish forgiveness. I think the second one is a little bit more common for us. Even though we know we've been forgiven, we have a real problem forgiving others. Yeah? Wouldn't you say that would probably be closer to us? That's it. If some of you nod your head a little farther, I think I'd hear the rattle and I'd be able to know that you're not asleep. So that's a good thing, I think. So Jesus puts our feet to the fire in these parables to force us to not just think about the principle of forgiveness, but to forgive. And then there's the next part of this, the personal part of forgiveness. Taking the principle and the parables, we come to the personal part of forgiveness. It's not enough to have some good rules to follow. It's not enough to have a nice story or two, in this case. Forgiveness is personal. It's a personal problem. And often, it's one of those sins that are not well identified. I mean, if somebody does something to you, you're pretty much aware of that sin, and we classify that sin. But sometimes when we're not doing what we're supposed to, nobody really knows about it, right? It's kind of personal. How many of you tell everybody what's going on in your head on a regular basis? And then why would you do such a thing? I don't know that's good for you. Next slide. So to help us to personalize forgiveness, we turn to the book of Philemon. Here forgiveness is brought and fleshed out in the human realm, but then that is the purpose of the principle in the parables, is to be enacted in our personal life. So I'm going to give you just a panoramic view, next slide, of Philemon. Philemon was saved through the ministry of Paul. Praise the Lord, he was saved. Yes, I'm moving on up to the north side. And Philemon was a slave owner, a common practice in Paul's day, by the way. And Onesimus was a slave of Philemon's, and he stole from Philemon, running away to Rome, and then he meets Paul. And Onesimus encounters Paul, and he's led to salvation. Onesimus is sent back to Philemon with a letter in his hand to give to Philemon. And forgiveness seems to be the overarching purpose for personal application in the book of Philemon. Forgiveness. Oh, there are other purposes in there that can be viewed, but forgiveness is number one. The purpose of the nature of a Christian love, forgiveness, is seen in how, the Bible said that we know that they passed from death into life because we know that we passed from death into life because we don't, but some of you may. We know that we passed from death into life because we love our brother. Okay? Who is your brother, by the way? Those you go to church with? Who's your neighbor? It gets more complicated. I don't want to complicate this, so stay away from the complication. I think that we can see in all of our lives, we see the providential care of God. Forgiveness is one of the great acts of God's care. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. He forgave us. We get that. The purpose and the principles for Christian relationships, forgiveness reconciles and restores our relationships. I'm glad that God forgave me. And I'm glad that because of what I've learned in my life, I find myself able to forgive. Now, if you ask me if I forgot, I would say that the bigger portion of the things that has been done to me, I have forgotten. But then again, I don't know that that was spiritual. That might be just because I have a lot of trouble remembering what I said yesterday. But I think in Philemon, next slide, forgiveness is one of those words that has been thrown around, and it often loses meaning. We talk about it all the time. It's one of the major things, one of the major tenets we talk about in the church is forgiveness. It's been an ideal that requires people to avoid, right? I mean, sometimes we know that we should forgive somebody, but we kind of avoid it, right? We put it on the back burner someplace. We kind of avoid it. I mean, there's no need to tackle it today. I mean, maybe tomorrow when I'm feeling a little better, maybe tomorrow when the weather's not bad, I might be able to. So, you know what? Since I can put it off, I might as well minimize this a little bit. Because, I mean, really, my forgiveness doesn't seem to be that important at the moment. I can put it off till tomorrow. That minimizes. It's not something that's right now, right? So kind of minimize it. I mean, right now, usually, if you get to a stop sign and it changes, you have a desire to do what? Stop? Yeah? Because it may not be good for you to go on through that stop sign, right? But when we learn that we can, put off to tomorrow what we should have done today, we can minimize that problem because it's not like something that has a direct, immediate, emergency response on our life. It requires my avoidance, and then I can minimize it. And you know what? I can even justify it. It wasn't me that put me in that position in the first place. It's the rascal who did it against me. So not only do I get to avoid it, minimize it, I can now justify it. Because I'm not the one that caused this problem. The other person did, right? Those of you that agree with that, just raise your hand. Okay, thank you very much. Too often, forgiveness gets reduced to just, and I've heard this, let it go. There was a whole entire song about let it go, until the point that none of us wanted to hear it ever again. You remember that? Let it go. And, and then, it's time to move on. Let it go. Move on. Forgive and forget. But anybody here who has been deeply hurt knows that it's not that simple, right? Forgiveness is not a single moment. We think it is, but it isn't. Matters of fact, sometimes there is a moment of clarity, but you need to understand that forgiveness is a process. It's a not one and done. That's why there's so many 490 times, because it's harder than we think. We need to acknowledge the reality of pain and move toward release in a way that honors both our wounds and our growth. I want to cover my wound because you hurt me, but I don't want to quit growing in the Lord, so I'm looking at both of these and trying to weigh them out. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about there? Again, shake your heads if you do. Have I lost you somewhere? Because I don't want to. Simply put, in order to forgive, we need to know what it is we're forgiving. Sometimes we really, no, Pastor, I know exactly, well, maybe not. Let's go on to the next slide. I think it's important for us to put a name on the pain. If you want to learn how to forgive somebody, you need to know what you're talking about. The first step in forgiveness is honesty. You cannot forgive what you refuse to name. This means giving yourself permission to acknowledge the hurt. This is what happened, whether it comes from betrayal, neglect, harsh words, abuse, a broken trust, Far too often, the betrayed and wounded person is asked to minimize their pain in an effort to forgive. Okay, just move on. That's so trite. But you, if you want to learn how to forgive, the very first thing you need to do is put a name on what you're forgiven. And you say, well, no, I don't think that's a good idea at all. Well, it may be. Let me just go on a little bit further. Many approaches to forgiveness emphasize compassion, empathy to the other person. How many of you, when you've been hurt drastically, have a desire to make sure the other person feels better? Yeah. I mean, if you've been hurt, right? And you say, but my Christian duty is to move past my pain and just make sure the other guy's okay. How many of you are good at that? Good. I'm glad, because I don't think any of us are. See, I think that it's important for us to understand that you need to have clarity inward first here. If you give a person a piece of lead and tell them it's gold, it still is lead, ain't it? Yeah. The thing is this. If you say, yeah, I forgive you, and you really don't, that ain't gold. No. That's deer skittle. That's what that is. I can't say anything else. I had to come up with a little something, you know. Matters of fact, I think you need to have clarity around the pain that you're forgiving another for having caused, in order that you can accept and heal that pain that is in yourself. So you ask yourself, first of all, what exactly hurt me? Not everything. Because oftentimes when something hurts us, we look at that person and we say everything about you and whatever you've done since the beginning of time. No, we need to identify what the hurt is, what it really is. And then the next thing is, what did they take from me? Do people take things from you when they hurt you? Huh? Yeah? What kind of things do they take when they hurt you? I can't hear. Joy. Joy, yeah, joy. They take your joy. What? Love. Dignity. Trust. Self-worth. I heard something that sounded like a mumble, and I'm old. Has to be louder. Well, what did they take from me? The very biggest thing that they take from you at that moment in time is your peace. Now, all of those things that you said are absolutely correct, because they're all involved in it, because whatever they is, whatever that particular thing that you had that you're talking about that's been taken from you, robs you of your peace. And that's difficult for us, yeah? And so I have to ask myself, what did they do to really hurt me, and what did they take from me? And then we go back to you. How has that affected my sense of self? You know, my self-worth. How did that affect my safety? How did that impact my personal environment? All of those inclusive things. How did that do that? And how is it affecting my relationships? When a person does something to you, does it affect your relationships? If your peace is gone, what do you start worrying about? Who else they're sharing it with, maybe? And what that's going to do to you in the long run? Next slide. So, I can handle pain until it hurts. Right? If you do something to me that's, marginal, I'm going to forgive you right away. And I got to tell you something. I probably won't remember it because it doesn't matter. People have come to me and said, time and time again, Pastor, I didn't mean to say something bad when I was talking to you. And I have no idea what they're talking to because I didn't get it. I just thought they were talking to me like anybody would talk to me. It didn't bother me any. I didn't see nothing because it wasn't a real pain. It was, I suppose if I started looking for pain, I could find it a lot easier. Don't you think you could? If you're looking for people to hurt you, you might find yourself more easily hurt than you anticipated. So I have to reflect, first of all, now if I'm going to get over, now I've put a name on it, but now I have to just decide how I'm going to deal with the pain. I put a name on it. This is what happened. I know what happened. I put a name on what happened. And now I have to figure out, how do I handle that pain? What do I do with it? How do I avoid it? Most of the time, and this is truth, we start to manage the pain. We want to manage it, the hurt that we have, yeah? You still following me? Not sure. Because, see, Andy doesn't give you a break. That boy, when he's prepared, he's not like me looking for help. He goes through the whole thing. That's probably a good idea. But sometimes our strategies being temporarily just only bring temporary relief. And it begins to compound the problem. Because we're trying to solve it and we're not really equipped to solve it. We need something more. And so we find ourselves withdrawing, maybe even lashing out. We become numb, and we start replaying the offense over and over and over again in our heads. Now, what's the healing in that? So we need to understand how I handle that pain. I've named it, but how am I handling it? I just reliving it over and over and over again. The stuff isn't about shaming yourself, and sometimes we do that too. We say, well, maybe usually if something happens to us, we try to change that because we're trying to change the environment. So what we do is we start taking personal responsibility. Maybe it was me, and all about this, maybe I should have been more aware. And when you notice how you've handled the pain, you start to see the story you've been living in and the way that wound has shaped your actions. But you have to take the time. Okay, I named the pain, and now I want to look at how I handled that pain, and all of this is done in a brief amount of time. Really, this is not something that needs to take you 8 years to accomplish. Although some of us are still holding a grudge that we had 10 years ago. Good, you didn't raise your hands. Often the painful event turns into a message. For instance, if a person was continuously let down by a parent, they might have received a message. They received, you are unimportant and you are worthless. Yeah? Now we say, no, this person isn't, I know that. But they still received a message. Look, my father is dead, so I cannot hurt him. But I was an all-star shortstop every year. My father never seen a single game I played. Not one. Not one game. Or Ronnie, or Dale for that matter. And at one time, all three of his boys in each division was playing all-star. Dale was all-star left fielder. Ronnie was all-star second base. I was all-star shortstop. Didn't see one game. It wasn't important. But now here it is all of these years later, and you know what I really would have liked my dad to say to me before he died? What? Yeah. I'm proud of you, son. I never heard those words. Does it affect me? Yes, it does. I have to work all the time to realize when somebody comes up to me and they say to me, boy, you're really something, Pastor. I got to tell you, I love every one of you, but it doesn't do anything for me. And the reason being is because of the fact that the person that I really wanted that to come from did not deliver. Almost everybody in here has a similar story probably that you could tell. And because children that are abused still want to know that mom loves them and dad loves them. They still want that. They desire that. That's part of our makeup. We desire it. We just want to hear that you're worth something. You're not worthless. So I can handle the pain. I put put a name on the pain. I can handle the pain. Well, maybe I can handle the pain. But before I do that, I better find out how I'm handling the pain. And when we get that message of unimportant and worthless, it's a message we tend to live out, and it causes issues later on in our life. In order to forgive or release, it's vital to know what you are releasing, not just from another, but what you may have picked up yourself. So it's not just forgiving that person. You need to forgive somebody else as well, because you might have found yourself identifying with whatever they said. So I can handle the pain. I put a name on it. This is how I'm handling it. And then I go back and I say, okay, when I was first hurt, what did I do to cope? Some have said I started drinking. Some become sexually promiscuous because of unfortunate, terrible, awful things happened when they were children. And the story goes on and on and on. And so I'm trying to forgive myself. I put a name on it. I understand that now. And I'm looking at how I handled it. And when I was first hurt, what did I do to cope? I have tried to ignore it. I've tried to numb it down. I've had to distract myself from the pain. I found something else to help me distract myself from the pain that I have. None of those things are going to get you into the forgiveness mode. You're still putting it in the procrastination mode. I'm going to do this tomorrow. I'm going to get better tomorrow. It's going to be better tomorrow. But you've got to start doing everything you can today to make tomorrow better. And so how did I direct my hurt inward? Self-blame, self-criticism. Did it show outwardly in my anger or my withdrawal from other people? What has been helpful in how I've responded? What hasn't been helpful? You start going over these things in your mind. How many of you found out that how you handled whatever happened to you has affected your relationships now? A lot of people, and I talk about it in marriage counseling. You know, a lot of people come to me, they get ready to get married, but they've been in relationships before. And the relationships dissolved. They were hurt. There was hurt involved. And so now they're coming together, but each person carries their own baggage into the marriage. And they remember the pain that they were. And then when their mate does something that reminds them of that other person, they start comparing this new relationship with the old relationship. It's not going to heal. And they're going to divide themselves away from that relationship that had potential. It's going to dissolve. You still following me here? You cannot, it's like, and it's not just, it's kind of like if a man marries a woman and the husband is dead, and, you know, and the thing is, the woman starts saying, well, you know, Charlie never done it that way. That man is going to have a lot of trouble trying to defeat a ghost. He's not going to be able to do it. So people carry baggage. They don't even know what kind of baggage. How did you deal with it? Half the time we have not put it down. We still have it. So the next thing is that, and I know I'm already late, and I am so sorry about this. I was trying to be in a hurry. Next slide is you need to own the pain. My own aches and bruises and cuts and wounds pain me, but it was an honest, stretchy pain, something that was healing once I own it. One of the harsh realities of adulthood is that even if the pain is not our fault, the responsibility for healing is on us, not on that individual. I don't like that one. That may seem like it's unfair. The other person hurt us, but it's also where our power lies. I can't wait on the offender to heal my pain. I need to heal my pain. I have to own it. I have to do it. I can't wait on that other person. That other person may never. My dad's never going to say to me. Now, I do know that he got saved in the latter years of his life, and when I get to heaven, I'm going to tell him, I say, listen, before you say anything about how glad you are to see me, I'd like to hear a couple words out of your mouth. Son, I'm glad you made it. I was surprised that you are. Wait, no, that's my dad, that's for sure. But The thing is, owning my pain means shifting from reaction to responsibility. I am responsible now. This is a long series, and I hope you guys will bear with me, but I'm going to try to expose some things about forgiveness. We've got trite answers to everything. You know, it's going to be better by and by. I'll put it off. You know, just get over it. You know, let it go. Move on. How easy that sounds. But you know, you can choose how you're going to carry it forward. And that's where healing deepens. Owning the pain is not excusing the offense. It's not saying it didn't matter. It is saying, I will not deny this happened, but I will not let it dictate my future. And there's the separation. You reclaim power the wounding may have stolen from you when you said, I'm responsible for getting better. I know some that have never taken that responsibility. They always want to forever say it was the other person who did this to me and I've never got over it. You need to understand something. They will never, ever, ever help you get over it. You have to take responsibility to get over it. Here the goal is empowerment. Shifting from being defined by the wound by reclaiming the fact that you're in charge. Reflection questions might include, what part of this pain do I need to acknowledge as mine to carry and process? In what ways have I allowed this pain to control my choices, my identity, my outlook? What would it look like for me to hold this pain with compassion rather than resentment? What steps could I take to begin healing regardless of what the other person chooses to do? What boundaries or practices could help me carry this pain in a healthier way? Well, I'm just going to finish with reading you a little something here. It's found in Matthew chapter 5. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when men shall revile you and persecute you and shall say all manner of evil against you, falsely, for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. The Lord was looking at people's lives that had been absolutely altered by Rome. They had no voice. They had nothing. Instead of him coming out and saying, I understand, he said, let me name a few things. I'm going to name the way to heaven. And if you'll listen to me and follow this, I'll get you there. So now the last step, and maybe I'll talk about this next week, is name what I am forgiving. Finally, forgiveness requires precision. General statements like, I forgive them, may sound a little hollow. Instead, you say this, I forgive my father for not being there when I needed him. Changes it. I forgive my friend for betraying my trust. I put a name on it, and now I have to name what I'm forgiven. It's harder. Naming what you're forgiving does two things. It releases, next slide, it releases you from carrying the debt against them, which is different from excusing them from responsibility or consequences. It frees you from carrying the weight that debt into the future. It doesn't mean you have to reconcile or restore the friendship Forgiveness is about your freedom, not their permission to re-enter your life. It's for you. It's for your freedom. Who or what exactly am I forgiving? What specific actions that I'm taking? Now I will arise, saith the Lord. I will set him in the safety for which he yearns. Oh, I like that. I will arise from the place that these people have brought me. And I'll get back into the safety of where I belong. And remember, forgiveness is often something we revisit, right? May take us more than once. Yeah. Feelings of hurt may resurface, and that doesn't mean that you failed. It just means the process is continuing. It's not forgetting. It's not excusing. It's not pretending it didn't hurt. It's a courageous process of naming, owning, and releasing. That's forgiveness. Part 2. Part 3, 4, 5, and 6 are coming. May the Lord bless you all. Again, your dollars are going to one of the church missions. It's going to Juan and Beth to help them with a horrendous hospital bill. I will tell you that in the midst of this, Juan had to go to the hospital again last night, and he was at Ohio State overnight. And I'd like for you to pray for him because he now has shingles, and he no longer has an immune system to fight it off. So these are the things that they're dealing with, and they surely would love to have your prayers. I know that sometimes when you talk about these things, people get a little bit nervous about stuff being out in the open, but please remember them in prayer. Yeah. And while I'm at it, are we still on?